Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to the listening public, the wonderful people here on the island of Nevis, those in St. Kitts, those who are listening throughout the Caribbean. Good evening to our friends and family in the United States and Canada, those in the United Kingdom. Wherever you are, good evening to you. Welcome to another edition of On the Mark. I'm your host, Mark Brantley, and we're here this evening from the hour of 8 o'clock until the hour of 10 o'clock, bringing to you views and opinions and matters that we think are of importance to you. Tonight's show is going to be a show with somewhat of a difference because there were various people who wanted to come on the show tonight. I apologize to those I could not accommodate, but I did indicate that we had a show which was in some high demand this week because several different people wanted to be here, and we have some restrictions in terms of the numbers that can be assembled in the studio at one time. And so what we've done is that there is a young lady, I think she's called Lady Composer. She is a competitor in the Kaiso competition this year. She has indicated she would like to release a new song on the mark this evening to reach our wide audience, not just at home but abroad as well. And we hope, will be able to call in around 8:30 and tell us what her song is about. And then we have a gentleman, Mr. Clayton Huggins, who has indicated that he would like to call in around 9 and share some views in terms of what's happening in terms of the arts here on the island. And so we look forward to hearing from him as well. Beyond that, the show is your show, and we would anticipate that we should have a number of calls this evening. And so we are having a show of a difference because ordinarily that's not the way we do the show, but because of the demand, we've decided to try to accommodate as many people as we can. Having said that, let me start the show on a very sad note. I would want to lend my voice to the large numbers of persons who have been expressing very deep concern, sorrow, and in many cases outrage at the passing of one of our senior citizens, known to all as Ella Merchant. Mrs. Merchant would have been the tragic victim of what appears to be a hit-and-run accident, where someone would have struck her and then left the scene and leaving her there on the roadside, where unfortunately she later succumbed at the hospital to her injuries. I'm told that her injuries were quite severe and that she was not able to survive those injuries. And so I would want to join all Nevisians, all Kittitians, all the people who live here, all the people who are of goodwill, in expressing my profound sorrow at the passing of Ella, and to express my deepest condolences to her family that she leaves behind. I think everyone who knows her knew her to be a very jovial individual. In fact, all across social media, all these videos have popped up of her dancing. One of my favorites is her dancing with the Honorable Eric Evelyn. And she was a lively individual. She worked, I'm told, at agriculture for many, many years. And I believe to have met her end in that tragic fashion was terribly, terribly unfortunate. The police have arrested someone. I'm told that one of their own, a police officer, is under arrest. Of course, everyone is presumed innocent until proven guilty, but the police did move swiftly, and I'm advised that they had the assistance of members of the community. I want to commend those in the community who would have come forward. I say all the time that crime in any form is a social problem, and it requires us as members of the society to decide to do something about it. We are very quick to blame the police, to blame the government, to blame. We have been less quick to come forward with information that would allow the police to more effectively do their jobs. When we look at the United States and other countries, we see that the public involvement in solving crime is very, very significant. Whenever a crime occurs, the first thing you see is that they put out these bulletins. They go out on television stations. They go around. Why? Because they're asking the public for information. Here, some members of the public have taken a view that they're not getting involved. And when that happens, it makes it more difficult, in some cases nigh impossible, for the police to solve crime. I believe that those who came forward should be commended. And I am hopeful that justice will be done. For someone, anyone, to have been struck, and more so an elderly person to have been struck, and for that driver to have driven away, I believe is a heinous act, and something that all right-thinking members of this community should condemn. And so we have lost, I think, a beautiful soul in Ella, someone who enjoyed her life, someone who danced, someone who always had a smile, someone who worked hard. She was a person working late into her life at the agricultural department. Accidents will happen. Once people have cars or machinery and the like, accidents will happen. But how we respond is always what defines us as human beings. Do we have the care and the empathy for others, or do we drive away once we have created that damage? I had been hopeful that Ella would have survived, but once we heard of the extent of her injuries, we knew that it was perhaps unlikely, and sadly she has left this world, left this plane, and we are hopeful that she's in a place where there's no more pain, no more sorrow, and that she is in a far better place than she was here on earth. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure all across this land we are all deeply sorrowful that Ella has lost her life in this fashion. And so we extend again from all of us here on The Mark, all of us here on Vaughan Radio, our deepest condolences to those who survive her, her friends, her family, and all of those who mourn. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a lot that is happening. I would have mentioned Culturama is in full swing. We have songs being released. We have a packed agenda. In fact, when I saw the schedule for Culturama, I wondered how on earth people are going to manage all those activities, because the activities are many. They are all over the island of Nevis. And what we've done this year is that we've sought to send Culturama to the villages and to the communities. Over the years, there has always been the position where people had to come into town to enjoy the Culturama festivities. Well, under the leadership of the Honorable Eric Evelyn, we would have built the David Freeman Center of Excellence there at Market Shop, a fine facility for events. And so we are now having the ability of a second facility in the country area where we can send some of these events. And so I'm advised that the Soca Monarch and the Kaiso semifinals will be staged there. And thereafter, we come, of course, into our cultural village and our cultural complex for the staging of the main events. I was particularly happy to see our Action Corner, I think it is called. Again, take note, I'm told that we've had them around the island. The last one was at Esme's. We've also had Kaiso around the island at various restaurants and shops around the island. The idea again is to take our culture into the community and to allow everyone across the length and breadth of this island to experience what Culturama is all about. I continue to remind our people, particularly those in the diaspora who listen to this show, that next year we celebrate 50 years of Culturama. And we are, again, as we did on the 40th anniversary, staging a homecoming celebration for our nationals abroad. And we're asking you to come in your numbers. I was particularly heartened yesterday to hear that one family numbering 200 are coming home next year for Culturama 50 and to have their family reunion. And so I encourage all of you out there to make your plans. If you're coming this year for Culturama 49, we look forward to seeing you. And we look forward to seeing you again next year as you celebrate with your family and friends our homecoming. We will have a lot of special events being put on so that our nationals abroad who are coming home will feel comfortable and feel welcomed here in the land of their birth. So if you have not been here for a while, this is an opportunity. We're giving you a lot of notice so you can plan effectively, and we trust and hope that you will be here. This summer, we anticipate having an excellent summertime here on the island of Nevis. Not only Culturama, but of course, all the way leading up to Independence, we anticipate having great events. And for Independence, we'll be shortly announcing our Heroes concert that we will have as we celebrate this year 40 years of independence. what is interesting is that the hotels in Nevis, all the hotels have now come on board, and they're all offering specials, because we're saying, why go to Miami and New York and London when you could have a staycation right here? Our friends and family in St. Kitts, come over to Nevis, spend a week with us, spend 2 weeks with us. Our friends and family in Nevis, go over to St. Kitts, spend a week, spend 2 weeks. Enjoy what we have to offer, enjoy what our country has to offer. And so I extend an invitation to all who can come, particularly our brothers and sisters in St. Kitts, to come over to Nevis for your weekend getaway, to get away for a week during the holidays, to bring your children so that they can know where their ancestors come from. As we know, many Kittitians trace their roots to the island of Nevis. And we invite you to come. This is your country. Enjoy it. I equally invite the people of Nevis to go to St. Kitts. Stay at the Marriott, stay at the Park Hyatt, stay at the inns, stay at the various guest houses. Enjoy what our country has to offer, because this country is ours. Let me move on quickly. I was in Anguilla on the weekend and had the opportunity. I was only there really for the one day, which was Saturday, but I had the opportunity whilst there to speak at the Ansar celebration for 2023, the Ansar reunion for 2023. It was, to my certain knowledge, the first time that the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, the Premier of Anguilla, the Honorable Dr. Webster, and I, as the Premier of Nevis, were on the same program, in the same space to speak. And I believe we had a good time. And I would want to commend ANSAR for its continued efforts in bringing these three islands, St. Kitts, Nevis, and Anguilla, together, in maintaining ties of friendship and bonds that bind us over the decades. I was particularly impressed with the organization, and I would want to commend all who were involved in that, and also to commend my dear friend Melvina Ordain, who has now emerged as a new president of ANSAR, having had the elections on the margins of this reunion in Anguilla. I believe that the event was an excellent event. After the event, the Honorable Prime Minister and I had an opportunity to engage with Mr. Keith Graves, a journalist in Anguilla, and he asked the hard questions. I believe that that interview has been aired, and the Prime Minister then had to leave because he and his delegation were going on to Brussels for some meetings, and I would, of course, made my way back home to Nevis. But it was good to be in Anguilla. We know we have lots of listeners in Anguilla, lots of people from St. Kitts and Nevis who are in Anguilla. I say good evening to them and to thank them for their warm hospitality as always. Anguilla is a beautiful place with beautiful people, and I'm truly grateful that they made me feel welcome. In fact, Premier Webster, when he spoke of me, said, "Welcome home," and that felt very good to hear. In the case of Dr. Drew, he was in Anguilla for the very first time, but I'm pretty sure it will not be his last time. And so we look forward very much to that continued engagement and the value that the diaspora brings to us. We are them and they are us. There's no difference between a Nevisian living in Nevis and a Nevisian living in New York. There's no difference between a Kittitian living in Sandy Point and one living in Boston. There's no difference between an Anguillan living in the valley or one living in London. The reality is that our navel strings are buried here, and our descendants are also entitled to the full fruits of their citizenship, or in the case of Anguilla, their belongership in these islands. And so in my own speech, I advocated even closer connections, closer ties, easier travel, easier trade between these three islands as we try our best to get closer together. I emphasize that too often we focus on the things that divide us instead of the things that unite us. And the truth is that anybody you hear here in St. Kitts and Nevis who said their name is Hodge or Lake or Webster or Proctor, you know right away that their roots are somehow in Anguilla. These are the realities of our coexistence. And I believe for far too long we have been pitted against each other and have been told to accentuate our differences, when in fact we should be accentuating our similarities and the things that unite us. And so that was my simple message. I believe the messages from all were well received, and I thank again ANSA for the invitation and for the opportunity to have been in Anguilla. Now, ladies and gentlemen, like I say, there is a lot that is happening. I remind you that at 8:30 we will take a call to release a song from Lady Composer, who has indicated that she would like to release her composition for Culturama at 8:30. I remind you again that at 9 we will receive a call from Mr. Huggins, who would like to update us on some events and developments in relation to the arts as well. Now, we, as I said, have a lot to discuss because quite a bit has been happening. I want to go on record tonight to express my serious disappointment in the levels to which some people here appear to be willing to stoop in order to create mischief. I have said that the elections are over, and whilst as a politician I will from time to time comment on political matters and give my own political view on matters, the day-to-day back and forth, the local roro as we call it, I have no time for that, because we as a government are focused on managing the affairs of this island for the benefit of all the people of Nevis. Tough decisions have sometimes to be made, and we are stepping up and prepared to make those decisions in order to ensure that this island remains sustainable. I have little time for the propaganda and the attempts at political mischief. Yesterday, I'm sitting doing my work for which the people have elected me, and my phone started going off, and it was a few people sending me something about breaking news. And this breaking news purportedly was news that I have been having secret meetings. In fact, they said secret meetings at Park Hyatt. And they say that I've been having secret meetings to try and topple Prime Minister Drew and to file some motion of no confidence, they say. I've been involved in this, and therefore the claim is made that there is some plot afoot. Now, I want to be pellucid this evening. I do not know if some plot is afoot to unseat Prime Minister Drew. What I do know is that Mark Anthony Graham Brantley is part of no plot to unseat anybody. I have accepted the results of the elections of August last, and I am now committed to doing my part from the opposition benches that I lead in the federal parliament and from the Premier's office and the benches of the government here in Nevis. I have no time whatsoever for foolishness. And when I look at what was sent to me and consider that some depraved individual would take the time to sit and concoct an entire fictitious story, I said, my God, we have some excellent fiction writers in St. Kitts and Nevis. Some Pulitzer Prize winning candidates who can, from thin air, create an entire narrative and then send it out to the world as breaking news. Well, I'm begging you, please, in the breaking news, include me out, as they say. Just miss me, as the young people say, because I don't really have time for foolishness. I have been very clear that when there are issues to be addressed, I propose to address those issues in a forthright and direct manner. I am not involved in any conspiracy with anybody. I am not involved in any backroom engagements with anybody. What you see is what you get. And when there are matters that I have a concern about, particularly for my beloved people of Nevis who have sent me to St. Kitts to represent them, I will raise those in the appropriate fora. I have no time for games or for childishness. And I would just urge our people to rise above the pettiness that we see exhibited from time to time. And I am not so sure why people are so upset. You know, the last time I saw Dr. Joe, I said, PM, we have to take a picture, you know, because I like to put up a picture of you and me, because somehow people go crazy when they see a picture. And I'm saying to myself, well, what is it that people expect? The Premier of Nevis should not have a relationship with the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. We must always be at war and at each other's throats. And can we survive 5 years of being at war? And to what end? How does a little boy in Brownhill or the little girl in Hanley's Road, the mother in Jessop's or Cotton Ground, the fisherman who's over there in Newcastle, the elderly lady in Butlers, how do they benefit if all that we do as their elected representatives is to war with each other, cuss each other every day, take no time to see where we can find common ground and where we can together seek to put in place policies and prescriptions for their betterment, because ultimately, let us never forget, it is they whom we serve. We do not serve ourselves. And at my age now, where my beard has turned to grey, I am hopeful that that grey suggests some wisdom. And wisdom dictates that wherever possible, we find common ground for the benefit of the people of Nevis, the people of St. Kitts, the people of the Federation. And so, I don't understand why it causes so much anxiety when people perceive that the Prime Minister and the Premier have a relationship and they are talking, they are cordial to each other, they engage with each other. It enrages some. They want war. They want row. They want confusion. And I am saying at the end of the day, how does that benefit us? Because, remember, I go back to where I started, the politics for the moment is over. There is no election that is in the air that I am aware of. And so should we fight each other for 5 years? And squander the opportunities which are bound to work together? To achieve together? To get something done for the benefit of the people who elected us to office? And I think when the lines open, people should tell me clearly, did you elect me to go to war or you elected me to go to work? What is it you elected me to do? Because I am of the view that you elected me to go to work on your behalf, to try and solve problems that affect you, to seek to make your lives better, to grow the economy, create jobs, fight crime, enhance education, enhance infrastructure, enhance healthcare, and raise our people up. That is why I feel I was elected. I'm not a warlord. They call me the sheriff, but the sheriff is somebody who enforces the law. He doesn't go to war. And so I don't understand that if you say you love this country, why it is there's some people, I listen to some so-called Labour commentators, they're vexed because the Prime Minister has a conversation with me, and that we can, as mature individuals, as men, grown-ups, be able to sit down and discuss issues. They are upset by that. I see others in the NRP, stone moderation vex. And every time there's a photo or there's an occasion where the Prime Minister and I are seen together, it becomes the topic of the day. Again, I ask, why? Why? Because when we step back from our own folly, we recognize that engagement is important. Even enemies have been known to engage when the issue is bigger than they are. I well recall the attacks, the tragedy of 9/11 in America. And I marveled at how Republicans and Democrats came together because America was under attack. You didn't hear all the noise of who's blue and who's red. Red state and blue state. There was just one America, united in response to the problem that they face. And equally we here, we not have had 9/11, but we have problems that we must tackle. And we will tackle them together. Because I believe this is what our people want. We must get to a level in our political discourse and our political thinking where it is not only about cussing, it is also about ideas. It's also about development. It is also about a tone in the country where people can share ideas. You know how good I feel when I'm in the parliament and from the opposition benches my colleagues can make suggestions and recommendations for bills to say we suggest this or we suggest that, and the government side listens because they don't have a monopoly on wisdom. They don't have a monopoly on ideas. Everybody in that parliament has something to offer. Because some happen to, at this point, be sitting on one side or the other, doesn't negate their capacity to offer their own ideas and suggestions and even solutions to the problems that we face. That is how we refine policy to make it better. And so, I'm not going to apologize. And when the lines open, the people can tell me whether or not the Premier and the Prime Minister having a working relationship is a good thing or a bad thing. I feel it's a good thing. And I feel the country needs an opportunity to breathe again, to feel comfortable again, without all the political intrigue and the row. We went through that in the recent past, and I don't think that there's a need for us to revisit that. And so, I was happy to see the PM in Anguilla. I pray that his trip went well. I hope to see him again soon to discuss some important matters between the two islands, and I continue to commit myself to working closely with the government in Bastia. And if that government were to change in 5 years or whenever, I'm hopeful that the Nevis Island administration will continue to work closely with the government in Bastia. And that openness and that dialogue, that new tone and spirit that we're seeing, that we will seek to build on it and continue. There will be rough patches, to be sure. These two islands have been in a limping marriage for a very long time, and when I say limping marriage, it means that there have been issues. But it is now time, I think, for us to work through those issues in a systematic way, in a respectful way, in a tone which gives room for compromise and for discussion. And so for me, that is critically important. It is 8:30. We're expecting a call now. I'm hopeful that this young lady is paying attention and that she can call. And when we do, we will play her song. First time on here on Von Radio on the mark. She has asked us to do that for her. And so we anticipate her calling in, and we'll take that call if it comes. 469-1616, 469-1700. We're asking other callers to hold for the moment because we're looking for this one caller who's a Kaisonian lady composer, I think she's called, and she is to call in to release a song this evening. While we wait for Lady Composer to call, let me just indicate, ladies and gentlemen, that there is quite a lot that has been happening globally. Today, we woke to the news that the UK government has now slapped visa requirements on the people of our sister Dominica. The Commonwealth of Dominica, hitherto their citizens were able to walk into England without a visa. Now they require a visa to enter England. We're told that Lady Composer is on the line, so we'll come back to that important discussion in a moment. Let me go to the phone and say good evening, Lady Composer. How are you?
Good evening, Premier Brantley. I'm fine.
All right. Well, you're bang on time. That's a good sign. And you have called in because you say you have a big tune to release this evening?
Yes, my second song. I've made it to the semi-finals, so we need to sing 2 songs. So I'm releasing my second song entitled It's Up to Us. to the world.
Well, congratulations on making the semifinals. And
Thank you.
do you think that this is the year when we'll see a female crowned as Kaiso Queen?
Of course, yes.
You think so? You think you have
Yes.
what it takes to win the crown this year?
Yes, I do.
All right. And how do you size up the competition? Who do you think are the people that you have to beat this year?
I'm not going to call names, but the competitors, they are very great.
They're very great. All right. Well, that's quite magnanimous of you. So tell us a bit about this song.
Well, as I said, it is entitled It's Up to Us, and it highlights the role that each of us can play to keep our country progressing. It's not one person, it's all of us.
Okay. Well, this is the premiere of It's Up to Us right here on The Mark. The second tune from Lady Composer for Culturama 49.
Queen of the Caribbean. Her bath hot springs, much relief it brings. Birthplace of Alexander Hamilton. West Indies cricketers and cultural icons. Great achievements of which to tell. Oh yes, oh yes. But it's up to us to keep little Nevis doing well. For Nevis is you, and Nevis is me. If she rise or falls, it all depends on me. We got to all lend a helping hand to keep afloat on native land. She's our bread and butter, we are at her beck and call. So it's up to us to save and not let her fall. Of much despair. Some even say Nevis now go nowhere. But what we all have to understand, the power for change, it lies in our hands. The way we vote in an election, oh yes, oh yes, greatly determines our country's direction. For Nevis is you, and Nevis is me. If she rise or falls, it all depends on me. We got to all lend a helping hand to keep afloat our native land. She's our bread and butter, we are at her beck and call. So it's up to us to save her, not let her fall. for law and order. Oh yes, oh yes. Empower yourselves, safeguard your country's future. For me this is you, and me this is me. If she rise or falls, it all depends on me. We got all in the helping hand to keep afloat our native land. She's our bread and butter, we are at her beck and call. So it's up to us to save her, not let her fall. This is one whole community, and its success depends on you and me. So let's treat her like a treasure. More love for each other, be your brother's keeper. The opposition and government must work together for the advancement of this country you claim to love. Oh yes, oh yes. Country above self, remember your solemn vows. For me this is you, and me this is me. If she rise or falls, it all depends on me. We got to all lend a helping hand to keep afloat our native land. She's our bread and butter, we are at her beck and call. So it's up to us to save her, not let her fall.
Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it, the release of the second song from Lady Composer. I was actually online looking at the comments, and I can tell you, Lady Composer, if you're still on the air or if you're out there listening, you're getting some excellent feedback. People are talking about the clarity, the lyrics, the way that you're expressing, the ability to sing. I think that you have something very special here.
Thank you.
Well, congratulations to you. Based on the feedback that I'm seeing, they're saying that you may well be causing some problems this year in the show, and that is what we like, the high standard. So I think this is an excellent second song. I confess I have not heard your first song, but certainly I think this song has a message and delivered in such a way that it is very compelling. So congratulations to you, and all the very best to you as you go to the semifinals and then hopefully into the finals as well.
Thank you, Premier Brantley.
Okay, keep up the good work. Thank you very much.
Thanks to all of my fans and all who have supported me so far in my Calypso career.
All right, excellent. That is Lady Composer, who I believe has a monster jam here with this particular song. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. As I indicated, yes.
Before I go, I would just like to say thank you to King Fonzie. He was the music arranger this time around. My daughter was the music arranger for the first song, but King Fonzie is the music arranger for this song. King Fonzie, the Independence King, the first Independence King, 1983, and West, I think he's Mr. Walters from Coal Hill. He was the producer, and my daughter did the backup vocals, Kaila J.
Fantastic.
And I write all of my songs, and yes, I'm the lead singer. Lady Composer, Benicia Clark from Jindaland Native.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you too for having me.
Good. All right. So That is Lady Composer, and she would have dropped, I think, a monster jam this evening. And I'm sure the other Calypsonians out there listening are saying, because everybody knows quality when they see it. So this is going to be interesting as we go forward. Somebody else is calling. Yes, so all right. I guess I didn't open the lines, but the lines are open. So let's take this call. Good evening. You're on the mark.
Yes, good night, Honorable Mark. I have to call from Patola this directly calling in, and I have to say, the men them have to look out. They have to look out. They can get some licks from this young lady.
I think it's a big song. I really do think it's a big song.
Man, the lyrics is good, the music is good. I think that the man them don't come hot. I believe shall be the king of the queen of Nevis. Telling you.
Well, I don't think, based on my knowledge, I don't think we've had a female crowned as yet. We've had that in St. Kitts, but I don't think we've had that yet in Nevis. So we'll see how that goes and see whether or not this can be the first time.
Will this and that and them got to they really got to come hard for this young lady. I'm telling you, I listened to the music tonight and she sounded really good. Is she a forthcomer?
I don't believe she's a newcomer, no. But certainly she's burst on the scene this year. I have really only taken notice of her this year.
Well, tell her I think that next year, God's prayer life, I will come up and chair her for the 50th. When it comes next year, God's prayer, all our life, I will be up there and I will see that she come number one to California. See you all. Have a pleasant night.
All right. Thank you very much, Lady Composer, if you're listening. See, you have fans calling all the way from Tortola. So people are excited, and I believe that when you have quality calypso, it adds immeasurably to the quality of our culturama. Let me go back very quickly to just cap off what I was discussing. I'm going to ask you to hold the calls. I will reopen the phones at the top of the hour at 9 o'clock. And that has to do with the UK announcement today that the people of the Commonwealth of Dominica will require visas now to enter the UK. They have indicated that they will grant a 4-week grace period, and after which the Dominicans will require that visa. I well remember how we felt here in St. Kitts and Nevis when Canada took away a long-held and long-cherished privilege that we had of going to Canada visa-free. And it took us from 2013 or thereabouts all the way to 2023 before we could get that matter resolved. And so I am sympathetic to the people of Dominica, because I well understand what it feels like to have had something and to have had that something taken away. Us here in St. Kitts Nevis having had that experience with Canada. But we have had such a long history with the UK that I confess that I am a bit surprised at the stance that it appears the UK is now taking in relation to immigration, in relation to our people who have in great measure built the United Kingdom. Whether it is the wealth that was created from our sugar plantations on the backs of our enslaved ancestors, or it is the people who went in the tens and hundreds of thousands to answer the call after World War II, the so-called Windrush generation, who went to rebuild old Mother England after the ravages of World War II. And so it seems now a little ironic, even perhaps a little harsh, to think that Caribbean people are being asked to get visas to come to the England in this new era, in a time when there's greater travel and greater movement and greater interactivity and greater people-to-people engagement. I do not know what the plans might be in relation to St. Kitts and Nevis or in relation to others in the OECS. Only Dominica in the OECS was named today. I do not know if there are plans to name others. But I would be hopeful that diplomacy is given an opportunity to work, and that those charged with our diplomatic efforts, in this case, the Honorable Foreign Minister, Right Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas and his team, he has a very competent team around him, that much I know, and I'm optimistic that they can engage quickly engage aggressively with the UK, with the Home Office, to really seek to address whatever issues there might be. I think it would be a very sad day for us as Kittitians and Divisions if we were asked to apply for a visa to go to England. It would be a very sad day. And I'm hopeful that it doesn't come to that. Because it was, in fact, only 40 years ago this year that we were still a part, if you will, of the UK in the sense of being a colonial outpost, if you will. Right next door we have Anguilla, we have in our region the BVI from where this caller just called, we have Turks and Caicos, we have Cayman, Montserrat, all of whom continue that long nexus with the United Kingdom. But these are Caribbean people. These are brothers and sisters. And so to think that they will introduce something which will have a dampening effect on our ability to commix and commingle, I think that that is a myopic view, a short-sighted approach. And it is my hope that diplomacy is given an opportunity to resolve whatever issues England might feel it is responding to. And so, that is my position. I, of course, wish my very, very good friend, Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit, and his team all the very best as they tackle these new issues as they emerge. The world, let's face it, is becoming increasingly hostile, particularly to small island states, particularly to those minnows that they feel they can push around. We don't have oil and the economic might or the military might to respond. And so oftentimes we're bullied in a very real way. And when I was the lead of our diplomatic efforts, as I did for 7 years in this country, you always had to walk that very thin line, to be able to have discussions at the highest level, to be able to navigate very, very hostile and treacherous waters. And I'm hopeful that we can continue to do that in an effective way and preserve all the rights and privileges that the people of St. Kitts and Nevis have enjoyed and continue to this day to enjoy in relation to access to various countries around the world. That is my hope. And I commiserate with the people of Dominica and hope that Prime Minister Skerrit and his team can quickly resolve this impasse and move beyond it. I take 10 minutes now, which is what I have left to get to 9 o'clock when we expect another call, to talk about a matter which I think is quite vexing. And that matter has to do with the fact that we had an election on the 12th of December last year. In that election, we had candidates lined up for the NRP, candidates lined up for the CCM, and we had a new party, the MRM, I think they're called, and they had 2 candidates in that election as well. We went to the polls. Some of us, like the CCM, we went with a message, we went with a manifesto, we made certain commitments. Others, like the NRP, they went and they said, get rid of them, that was their message. The MRM, I'm not sure what the MRM said, but we went to the polls. And the people would have voted. There were no allegations of any merit in relation to that election. The election was free and fair, and it was free of fear. When the dust settled, the NRP, which had 1 seat going into that election, actually emerged with a 2nd seat, winning the seat of St. James by a mere 8 votes. I went, contested St. John's, I emerged 147 votes ahead of my opponent. In Charlestown, the Honorable Spencer Brantley incumbent, he emerged. When he won that seat first, he won it by 11 votes. This time he won it, I think, by 29 votes. And he emerged as the victor. And so, the spoils were shared, if you will. NRP did better than anybody anticipated and got an extra seat. Well, they won one seat more at the election. And then obviously because of infighting, they promptly lost the one that they had won. English is a funny language. So they won one and then lost the one that they had won. But rather than looking to see where they would have gone wrong, as we in fact did, we had a post-mortem, we reflected and we looked and said, well, how could we have lost St. James? And what we need to do, and we're doing that, to ensure that that seat is back in the CCM column in the next election. But that to me is what parties do. Instead of that, the NRP decided to embark on a road of prolonging the election cycle by making all kinds of outlandish allegations of fraud and all manner of evil, they allege, happened in the election. They knew, as we knew, because all of us are here, that that did not happen. They knew that. But yet they went out and they started to create this whole hullabaloo that somebody thief election in Nevis. And for the very first time in my political career, an election petition was launched against me. Now, I have been around this politics for a while. I have been around the courts and the law for a while. And so when I saw what I was eventually served with, and the cynicism they served me on my birthday, the 11th of January. That's when the bailiff was sent to look for me on my birthday. I took it, and when I read it, I said, well, they have wasted the ink and the paper, because what this is and nothing is the same thing. I don't know who the lawyers were, but the document that I was served was fraught with difficulty, fraught with procedural and other errors. And so I immediately retained lawyers and said to the lawyers, listen, I want this matter here dealt with aggressively. I believe that the approach is to have a strikeout. Spencer Brand did the same thing. And we went to the top law firm of Daniel Brantley and asked them to engage on our behalf. In the case of J.D. Keynes, we saw that she engaged Mrs. Cozier, and then by the time we got to court, there was some counsel from Antigua as well. In the case of Dr. Patricia Bartlett, she engaged, I'm not so sure who she engaged, because at one point the Honorable Patrice Nisbet, as he then was, he was there. The young man, Smarty, Eustace Nisbet, he was there, it appears, at some point involved. The young lady, Hector, she was there, Sandra Hector at one point. I did not see Elhansville Hector. He looked like he decided that he not getting involved in that because he wasn't around, but I saw the others. And they instructed their lawyers. We know who their lawyers are, the local lawyers, in terms of people like Smarty and Patrice. They're NRP, we know that. People like Cozier, well, Mrs. Cozier, I'm not sure where she is politically, but her husband, he used to be in the NRP cabinet until, of course, he was no more politically. So they got their team together and they brought action. We responded, and I want the public to hear me now. They brought action in the court. We had action on the road, because that's what an election is, to go into the highways and byways and talk to people. And having had that action on the road, the people said that they want the CCM to continue in government. And so they not only gave us the majority of seats, they also gave us the popular vote. The NRP in its wisdom decided they will go to court. And when they get to court, let me tell you now, the judge had a few interactions. The judge called a conference with everybody. And I remember listening, and the judge said, having seen what they've filed, he said, be sure, be certain that you have dotted the I's and crossed the T's, and you want to go down this road, because there are consequences if you're not successful. There are consequences if you fail. And they listened to all of this and they said, yes, they're going to go down the road. Now, if you keep warning somebody and telling them, as I did, I said to my good cousin Pat, I said, Pat, Leave this thing alone. Don't let nobody carry you and put you in hot water and can't take you out. We know in this world you have a lot of people encourage you to get yourself in trouble. And when you're in trouble and you start to bawl out, you look around, they are nowhere to be found. And so I said, Cousin Pat, listen to me. Whatever you were vexed about that you jump into the politics, that is all right. But you're now going and straying into the court process, and if you know you don't have a case, leave it alone, because there are consequences. Well, Pat, now listen to me, because Pat got tell me and tell us and all of them people there, the boy they were named Buster, and the one there from CFBC, all of them characters is who they got in the ear. People who neither have the courage nor the ability. People whose future is already behind them. Those are who they got advising them. And so they row, come, run to court. And so they went to court. What do you think? You think the court is concerned about politics? No, the court is concerned about law. And so the court ruled the only way the court could have ruled. And Kinney kept them out of court. And having Kinney kept them out of court, they now have to pay costs. Well, I think liars cheap. Liars not cheap, you know. So now that the cost part come now, and you now have to pay the piper, I hear them start to bawl out. I say a joke them gonna make. Lord, give me a chance. A joke I have we gonna make. We not been serious, you know. And I'm saying, oh, so it go. We have a very peculiar community and society, it seems, where people are encouraged to do foolishness. And the very ones who encourage them to do foolishness, when they get themselves into problem, are the ones who start to say, Lord, give them a chance. And so, I would have gone ahead and filed my application because I have said, Cousin Pat, I tell you, go sit down. I said to you, take it easy. Whatever you were vexed about, you went into the election, you turned from CCM, so you turned NRP. You buy a set of green clothes when you know only blue frock you used to have. And all of a sudden you up and down, say you're NRP, Cousin Pat, go sit down. I told her so. When she get the licking now in the election, she go back down, say she go on court. I call up my name. Good, decent Hebrew boy who grew up across the street from her. She know how we live. When Maisie passed the cornmeal across the fence to Uncle Jolly, and my mother passed something over the fence to Maisie, that's how we live. Run gone and gone court, go send me the devil. And I tell her, go sit down, take it easy. Now listen to me. Listen to Buster them. Well, Buster them gonna help you pay costs now. Poor Buster not got nothing. He's what you call a man of straw. The other one there, from CFBC, well, what he got? Nothing to drop off the truck at CFBC nowadays. So you run yourself into serious difficulty because them who encourage you to go and do foolishness are now not around to help you. And so people are say, Lord, a joke they better make. Will I make some serious joke? Not all laugh, you know. And I keep telling people, when people don't trouble you, don't trouble them. You all like to go and pull the lion tail, and then start to bawl out like the lion trouble you. Is you trouble the lion? So I said I want to collect my costs. I asked the lawyers to proceed. And all of a sudden, Tutmun Sam and a guy start to bawl out. Right? Said I want to pay. I see my good cousin Pat make noise. I said, Lord, poor Pat. They want to collect from poor Pat. Well, poor Pat, where you never take it easy and go sit down. Where you hang your hat where you know you can't reach it. And all of them will encourage you with your foolishness. Are they now prepared to put their hand in their pocket? When I look at the thing, I think the amount is 48,000 US dollars. Lion not cheap. And I'm saying these things because I warned. I admonished. And I said, leave those things alone. You went into the election, you lose. When you lose, you go home. Instead of that, you want to come sue the empire. You want sue the umpire, the third umpire, everybody. And you say the bowler cheat and the bowler tamper with the ball. When you know it's bat, you can't bat, you get your stump lick out. That's the way life is. Anyway, the gentleman who's supposed to call is on the phone. So let me go to the phone now. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Good evening, Mr. Brantley.
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening to your audience. My name is P. Clayton Huggins, and I am...
If you can move away from your radio or computer, because...
Yes, I actually just turned the sound off completely.
Good.
I'm calling on behalf of the Charlestown Gallery. We normally have a show coordinated around the time of Culturama, and this year is no different around the timing. However, normally I curate that show, but this year we are slightly different in that we have several people involved in coordinating the show, primarily Ms. Chantal Miller, who several months ago had a painting seminar, I think at the Four Seasons, where she got young female painters, and those female painters have now produced work, and those work will be on exhibit for the show. She also had an artist come in from the Bahamas, Miss Felice Roberts, and a couple of her pieces will also be in the show. The show opens on the 23rd of this month. The official opening is the 23rd, which is Sunday, I think at 4. And the Monday you can come in, look at the show of young artists and purchase. We also have coordinating the show Miss Kristen Hendrickson and Mr. Pierre Liebert from St. Kitts, because we got local painters, artists from St. Kitts and Nevis. And we wish to inform the public of this event and encourage them to come and support, not only by looking at the work, but by purchasing the work. Although we normally have so-called local painters, we have regional painters, and we do have work by an artist from Nigeria who works in fabric, and her work will be on display. Unlike other offerings, this particular work or particular show has a theme of identity, and it's quite interesting to me as an artist to see the various ways in which artists interpret notions and ideas of identity. So we want to encourage the audience. We are open Monday to Friday, 10 till 2. We are situated in the building at the Cotton Ginnery next to the Walwyn Square, which is the bus stop for the North, St. Newcastle. And we look forward to entertaining the public and informing the public about the quality of art being produced here in the Federation and regionally, in fact.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for that update and to thank you for all the work that you and others have been doing quietly, but important work in promoting the arts. I think that's an area, the visual arts, that really has not got as much attention as it should get, because we do have a number of very talented artists here. So I'm happy that that is happening, and that for the Culturama we'll have the necessary exhibitions. And I encourage, like you have done, persons to not only go but to purchase, because at the end of the day this is their livelihood, and purchasing the art allows them to continue to create.
Yes, indeed, to buy more supplies and to continue to paint. And it's also an encouragement to an artist to know that people are prepared to pay for their work, and it's a great way to encourage a young artist to continue to paint.
Good, excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We do appreciate your call. Thank you, and thank you for being prompt at 9. At 9 the phone started to ring, so I'm happy we were not on so-called Caribbean time.
Much appreciated.
All right, cheers.
Good night to you and your audience.
Good, thank you. So we have 7 minutes past the hour of 9 o'clock, and we're just going to open the phones now at 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. I was bowling off a long run there about this cost issue when the caller called in, and so it is now time to just wicket to wicket and just keep it steady. But I continue to marvel and shake my head and just be so perplexed at the attitude that some of our people have taken, that they must come at you, they must interfere with you, they must try to harass you. And then when all of that is done and it goes badly for them, they start to bawl out. Start to bawl out. So all of a sudden I'm hearing, oh, yeah, me ain't got no money, and if you ain't got no money, go sit down. Where you gonna dance for if you know you can't get the money, you don't have the money to go in the dance? Where you going there for? And I gave the warning. All of you remember I gave that warning. Free advice. I come right here on the show. I must try and find the tape. I gave free advice. I said, my good cousin Pat, go sit down. Take it easy. Not let nobody fool you, because George Bartlett and Maisie Bartlett no raise no fool. And she run gone down the road, and look who the cheerleaders are. I am sure now she running down the road, she look back. What do you think? You think Hensley gonna put his hand in his pocket? You think the boy by name Hasty Belly gonna put his hand in his pocket? Buster, CFBC, you think any of them gonna put their hand in their pocket? Them pants don't even have pocket, because all of them are made of straw. So the burden now gonna fall. When you were told, I cajoled, I requested, I begged, I beseeched, I admonished, every word in the English dictionary. I say, Patricia, leave that alone. But you refuse to hear. And what them say? Old people never wrong, you know. Who no hear gonna feel. And Teacher Ivor of blessed memory used to say, a word to the wise is enough. Let's go to the phones and start to take these calls. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Good evening. Question based on the recent bill. The NIA workers, are they being paid by the Nevis Island administration, right?
Yes.
And when you get appointed, meaning that you're an established worker, it means that you're still being paid by the NIA, or you're being paid by the federal, or the money come from the federal to the NIA?
All NIA workers are paid by the NIA.
Even if you're an established worker?
Yes.
All right, because I was trying to ask if they would have been on the federal enrollment from the bill where they get they pay every 2 weeks.
No. That is a matter in St. Kitts. That has nothing to do with the island of Nevis.
So it doesn't affect the established workers either?
No.
Okay.
Right. The federal government has taken a decision that they will pay every 2 weeks. I'm not sure what the rationale for that decision is, but that's a matter for them. We have a monthly... Again, I'm sorry?
But the established workers, aren't they governed underneath the federal government?
Caller, all workers in Nevis who work for the NIA are paid by the NIA. They are employed to the NIA. They are paid by the NIA. All their benefits, all their responsibilities are under the NIA.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay? So just as the same way the NIA cannot make rules for workers in St. Kitts who work for the federal government, so the federal government doesn't make rules for workers that are employed to the NIA.
All right.
All right?
Yeah.
So I just want to make that clear. And we in Nevis have said that we are sticking with the usual payment of wages and salaries. There's some weekly workers. Those continue to be paid weekly. But the monthly workers will continue to be paid monthly. That's the system that we have. It works fine here in Nevis. We have had no outcry from persons to say they want to be paid every 2 weeks. The federal government has introduced that on St. Kitts, and of course that is their right. We will stick with the system that we have here currently and hope that that continues to work well here on the island of Nevis. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark. Good evening, caller, you're on the mark.
Good night, Honorable Brantley.
Good night to you. How are you?
I'm fine.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to read just one verse here for you tonight, and then I have something there to say, okay?
Sure.
This is coming from Luke chapter 11 and verse 33. No man, when he hath lighted a candle, putteth it in a secret place, neither under a bushel, but on a candlestick, that they which come in may see light. Let them pick sense out of a nonsense. Anyway, Honorable Brantley, I admire and congratulate you for getting along with Prime Minister Joe. That's the way it's supposed to be. Why fight? Is peace we the sensible people want? May God bless us all and grant us the knowledge and the courage to hold on to peace and make St. Kitts and Nevis a better place for us all. Okay, good night.
Well, good night to you, and thank you for the scripture, and thank you for calling in.
Yes, okay.
Okay? All right. Yes. We have about 45, 46 minutes left in this show tonight, and I am hopeful to take as many calls as I can at 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. So, callers, if you can call in and share your views and opinions on any matter that we've raised tonight, but also any matter that is impacting your mind, we would appreciate it. Now, let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello?
Sheriff, good evening.
Good evening to you, my dear. Are you back?
Not yet, not yet.
All right, what do you have for us tonight?
Isaiah 40 verse 30 and 31. Even the youth shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. I would like to say good night to the staff of the Rock Hotel in Kingston, Jamaica, especially the staff and my taxi driver, Tom. Good night. Michelle, I love you, and good night.
Good night, and I love you too. Well, you're calling every week from a different destination. I don't understand. You call from America, you call from Canada, you're calling from Jamaica now?
Jamaica.
I love it. I love it. Well, enjoy your time, okay? And stay safe. All right. Well, that's our dear friend who calls in every week when she is available. And even though she has gone on vacation, she's still calling in to share scripture with us. So we thank you very much for that call and hope that you continue to have a wonderful vacation. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening. You're on the mark.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Brantley.
Good evening to you.
How are you?
I am doing well.
Okay. I'm just called to let you know about one of the few troubles I had last week. Okay. Last week, Mr. Brantley, last week Thursday to be exact, I went into Main Street Grocery to pick up an item. After pick up the item, I went up in the line towards the cashier. About 3 or so persons was in front of me. The person who was cashing was on the phone talking to the phone. So after a period of time, I said, "Miss, I have to go work. I'm here on your phone." And she replied to me, "If you can't wait, go. If you can't wait, go." So I actually wait because I wanted the item. So I wait. When my turn come, I went up to the cashier. I went up to her. She cashed my item. It come to about $7 and some cents. I give her $100. I tried to give her $100. She pulled it from my hand. I said, "Miss, why do you pulling my money from my hand? You drop my money on my hand." And it go like that. She gave me back my change, part of my change. She gave me back part of my change. I was supposed to like $90-something. Give me back $40-something, $42 and some cents. I said, "Miss, my money is not right. What are you trying to do? Thief me? Or are you trying to rob me?" I said, "Miss, you thief." And she replied, "A thief like your mother. A thief like your mother." About 3-4 times, Mr. Brantley, she said that, "A thief like your mother." And when I went, attempted to do what I wanted to do, some people were behind me. I said, "Mister, she's wrong, but go ahead, take it easy, take it easy." Mr. Brantley, I was so mad that if I had do what I wanted to do, I might have still in prison. I might have still locked up or out on bail. I don't know which one. Okay? I was so mad that I know the police couldn't do anything about it. I know that for a fact. But I was so mad, I walked up to the police station. When I go into the police station, I meet two police at the desk, a female and a male. I state my case to them, tell them why I'm here. They asked if you know the lady. I said, I don't know her name, but if I say her, I know her. If the male police asked me, are you one who work down in the corner? I said, yes. He said, oh, I know her. He said, I'm going to talk to her. I don't know if he talked to her or what. Okay? I didn't satisfy because I'm still hurt because my mother is 96 years old. That young man don't know anything about my mother and don't say thief like my mother about 4 times. Okay? And I didn't take it like that. I inquired who is the manager. They told me somebody said to me if I wanted to talk to the manager, I have to go over at Prospect in Trevor building. I go over there, I drive over there, I am rapped at the door, somebody come out, a gentleman come out, I say, can I speak to the manager? He said, he's the manager. I state my case to him. He then asked me, I state my case, he then asked me, so you get back a car exchange? I said, yes. He said, you know the lady, just like the police did? I said, yes. He said, you want to walk down the corner? He said, yes. Or I said, oh, you don't have to go no further, I know her. He said, you get back your change? I said, yes, I finally get my change. Then he said, I'm glad you didn't knock her because, she only said something and you actually get it wrong. You understand? But I called because I heard because she don't know my mother. My mother is 97 years old and she don't know my mother and she's going to come and tell me she thief like my mother. She thief like my mother. Mr. Brantley, you all have to do, you're the premier and you all have to do something about these people because not everybody going to put up to these things. I bear with it, I put up with it. Here as I go, I went to the police station, even though I think the police can't do anything, and I went to the manager. Mr. Brantley,
okay,
you all have to look into these things.
All right.
And I called tonight to let the world know and the listening public know that in case they have to face this, I'm going to need place and maybe this is some of the things they have to face. Okay? So I thank you for listening, Mr. Brantley.
So well, thanks for the call, but let me just check. So this wasn't a government department. This was
I know it's not a government department.
But I'm just asking, it's a private business?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Main Street Grocery, to be exact.
Okay.
Main Street Grocery.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I am terribly sorry that you had this experience. I think customer service is something that we all need to continue to work at. Sometimes people are having a bad day and they try to take it to work with them and take it out on customers. So I regret that you had that. You did say that we had to do something about it. We try, so far as government is concerned, to have, in fact, we've just completed a wide-ranging training in relation to customer service where we have exposed government departments and individuals to better customer service. Whether or not, caller, that is something that we can do in terms of the wider community. I am unsure, but I hear your pain, and I know who you are, so I feel badly for you. Nobody likes anybody to refer to their mothers, and especially your mother being an elderly person. But I'm hopeful that the management, now that you've taken it to them, that they will pay attention and seek to correct what obviously is a wrong, because no customer should be treated in any hostile fashion by any business place. And so hopefully you'll get some redress. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, you're on the mark.
Good evening, Mr. Brantley.
Good evening to you.
I have heard the complaint from the person who called about the very unprofessional service that he received maybe last week or whenever it was. I heard it on the Talk That Gets Results last night's show, but I was too late to call in live. However, I feel strongly and personally that if that individual was suspended or, more importantly, fired, it would have taught a lesson or sent a very strong message to the employees that that kind of behavior is totally unacceptable. It's just the way I feel. The whole thing started when that cashier, whomever the person was on the phone, a private personal phone, while there were customers on the line. That's the first step of unprofessionalism. And the way I feel is that even though the caller said we put it on your show because your show is a widely listened to show so the world could hear, the problem or the discipline to that starts at home. And one of two things should have happened. That person should either have been suspended for about a week or so, because Nevis is small and people need their jobs to survive. And if they have to lose their jobs behind recklessness or rudeness in the workplace, then that might send a strong message that it will not be tolerated, and it might just force others to be on their best behavior while they're in the workplace. That's just the way I personally feel and would have addressed that situation. All right?
Well, thank you very much for that. These situations are difficult. You see this thing called a cell phone? Even sometimes when the calls come in, I look at the phone because sometimes people are messaging me. But I think too many business places, and the government too, when individuals come in, some people feel that they ought not to attend to the customer or the client, but rather to continue their chat or their browsing or their Facebooking or their Instagramming or their ordering of clothes and things, whatever it is they're doing. And I think that is unfortunate, and it really needs to stop. I tell people all the time, and every time we have a session with new public servants, we have an annual intake, and I usually have an opportunity to speak to them, and I recount to them that prior to me being in government, when I was a practicing lawyer, I went to a government office one day, and the person when I got there was a young person in the front, and they had their head down in their phone, and they did not look up. I came to the door, I walked up to the partition, they didn't look up, to the counter, they didn't look up. So I cleared my throat, I said good morning, at which point they looked up, and I said I wanted to see so-and-so. And the person just said, them no, yeah, and put back their head in their phone.
Oh my goodness.
But wait, the story not finished. Later that evening, I was meeting with a client at Four Seasons. And as I walked into Four Seasons, a young person came up to me and said, good evening, sir, how can I help you? And when I look at the person, it's the same person from early in the day. But early in the day, they were on a government job.
Professionalism, that's what that is called. Selective mannerism or good manners.
You see?
Professionalism, yes.
And later in the evening now, they're down at Four Seasons, and down at the Four Seasons, when you say you want a glass of water, certainly, the customer service, and I said, perhaps it is what we accept, because certainly they could not be at the Four Seasons on their phone and ignoring the customer. But in government, they had no difficulty doing that. But we have been, because you raise an important point, that people need their jobs in order to eat and to pay their bills. And so a lot of times we don't want to put people out of a job. But if you know you need your job to eat and to pay your bills, then you must also respect your job. What I mean by that is to say, to consider it that you are getting a benefit from this place and this employment, and therefore you protect what you have. But a lot of people act like they don't care.
And to add to that same trend of thinking, with they need their job to feed their family or to put food on the table, again I go back to the point that Nevis is a small place, and if one were to be used as an example of you got suspended or worse, get fired behind rudeness or disrespect to the customers, they will straighten up. I feel strongly about that. They will straighten up, because they would not want to know that the reason they're out of a job is because of their rudeness or unprofessionalism. This Nevis is not the United States where they can go to another state, another job, another this, another that. and are unnoticed. No, the place is too small for that. And if an example was to be made of just one, I got a complaint of that nature, you're out the door, they will change their attitude. I feel that strongly, and I hope the manager or the powers that be for that company would listen to the general public, hear their views, and try to do something about it, because there's nothing more humiliating. I mean, a thief of your mother, really? All right, so I do hope the gentleman would get some solace and understanding that what he's complaining about is totally unacceptable, and it's not everybody that's in the corner of that person who so disrespected him while he was online, waiting to not only be served, but to pay for his goods.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your input.
You're very welcome.
I certainly appreciate it. And I think the call is a wake-up call to all of us that we need to do better. And
yes,
the custom.
and you know, he said he put it on the air for because you're government and this and that you have a good listenership, which is a good thing. The listenership is a good part of it. So I'm sure more people heard it and will voice their view or opinion in whichever form they want to do that. But I hope it will be for the better, because in these big countries where some of us are, or left Nevis from to be, the minute that you walk through the door, your cell phone or whatever else you have gets put aside. And if you have to use that cell phone, something personal or very urgent, then you ask to be excused and you go privately and deal with what you have to deal with. But once you're on company's time, that's the no-no.
Okay.
And I hope the message will get across that cell phones and other distractions of that sort should not be a part of a person's day-to-day in the workplace for which they're being paid. That's how I feel.
Okay, thank you for your call.
Take care. Have a good night.
You too.
All right.
All right. So thank you for that. And as I said, I think this is a wake-up call to all of us that we need to do better in terms of our customer service. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening. You're on the mark. Okay, we've lost that caller. Let's try this caller. No? Okay. Callers, 469-1616, 469-1700. Those are the numbers to call. We have about half an hour left, and so we can take quite a few calls. And so if you're out there and you want to be a part of the show, please call in. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening. You're on the mark.
Good evening, Mark. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
All right. Good show, man.
Thank you.
Concern, though, or maybe it's a question. Or observation, if you will. I have a child, a daughter, who she has gone to school, did well. The last I know from graduating from 5th grade, from five distinctions, 7 subjects. Now she went on to 6th form and did more things there. Now she is, currently working in a government business, a government place, and on PEP. I'm wondering what the government is doing for these young people who are leaving school, who have these qualifications, these subjects, and is still on PEP. And if what the government is doing to try and bring more people into the fold and take them off PEP, especially these people with talent and the education that can take the government forward and could be a bright future for whatever department or whatever government ministry they're in. So I think it's it could be a form of stagnation to me.
How long, if you don't mind me asking, has your daughter been on the STEP program?
I'm sure it's going on 4 years now.
4 years, okay. All right. So what is the government doing? I think that's a very important question that you've asked. But to put that in context, we have to understand that we have a few hundred young people who leave school each year. And so when you look at GSS, you look at CSS, you look at 6th form, etc., we have a few hundred students that come out each year. It is impossible for the government to hire everybody. Impossible. And I'm not going to sugarcoat that or try and run from that. The STEP program was designed to allow people, especially young people, to have an opportunity to work in various businesses or in the government, as the case may be, and to get some experience. And it is paid for via the STEP program with funds from the Citizenship by Investment program. Now, it is supposed to be a skills training program. And so in my respectful view, we should be placing these youngsters in the private sector. Send them by the hairdressers, the bakers, the banks, the engineering firms, the construction firms, so that they could pick up a skill. Instead of that, for some reason, the program became one where the STEP office seemed to be saying that they only want to put people with government and government departments. And unfortunately, what that has led to, caller, is the expectation that these government departments now must hire these individuals and put them onto the government payroll once they have been there working on STEP at that government department. What is the government doing? The government is trying to expand the economy, to create opportunities in the wider economy, understanding that we cannot hire everybody and that there is not a government job available for everyone who wants one. For those who are on the STEP program and are in government, we're trying to accommodate them slowly in a very deliberate way. Those that are performing and have the right recommendation, the right attitude, and we are told from their supervisors that they are people that are looking for a career and can have a career in government. We are weaning them off slowly. In fact, just today I believe we would have signed off on a few persons moving from STEP and moving onto the government payroll. But it is a process. Remember that once a worker is on STEP, that worker is paid for. The wages of that worker are settled by STEP, the STEP office. And so that worker is not paid by the NIA. If that worker is making, let us say for example, $500 a week, I'm just drawing a reference, then that $500 a week is paid by the STEP office. Once that worker transfers to the NIA, it means then that the taxpayers of Nevis have to now find that $500 a week to pay that worker. And so there are some complexities involved. The idea behind STEP was really for a temporary arrangement, and that's why I asked how long she's been there, because the truth is that people really shouldn't be on STEP for 4 years. I understood it would be a year to 2 years, and then at that point the employer should be able to make a determination: are they keeping this worker or not? Does this worker have what they're looking for or not? And so that is what we're seeking to do now, to kind of streamline, to absorb those individuals that come recommended by their superiors and that we can absorb within the budgetary constraints that we have, but also to expand the wider economy. So that's why we went out and got the call center restarted, attracted investors for that. We're encouraging small businesses to set up. We had a fund that we set up for small businesses, specifically for women and for youth. All of these are things we're doing where we're making up to $100,000 available, because we're saying to our people, you can't just sit down and wait for somebody to give you a job. If you have a skill set, you can also start your own business. You can also put yourself in a position where perhaps you can employ other young people and other persons with yourself. So that's what we're trying to do, caller. What I would say to you specifically is that if your daughter, because you did suggest it's your daughter, wants to move on to the government's payroll and move from STEP, then whoever they work with in whichever department, that department head would need to make that recommendation. And that would then look at the performance of the worker over the period that they've been there. But I think after 4 years, it is time indeed that something be done, because as I said, the program initially was designed for 1 to 2 years, after which the employer should be able to make a decision as to whether or not this employee should continue. Let me go back to the phones. We have about 35 minutes left. 25 minutes, forgive me. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Hey, good evening, Honorable Mark Brantley.
Good evening to you.
Yes, this is Carl down here from Fountain and Pine Gardens well in St. Kitts. Honorable Mark Brantley, you know when I come, I like to ask questions. So let me ask you. The Honorable Prime Minister of the Federation have been on several radio stations announcing that his intention is to give an increase in the minimum wage. You know, I like to ask you questions because both of you are supposed to be working together as the Prime Minister and the Premier of Nevis. My question is to you. Have Dr. Joe, the Prime Minister of the Federation, had any discussion with you in the last several weeks or several months concerning minimum wage increase?
No. Dr. Drew and I have not had any discussion about minimum wage, but as I indicated at the top of the show, we are due to meet shortly, and I am fairly certain that that will be one of the items on the agenda. But we have not had that discussion yet.
Well, okay, that sounds good, but the Honorable Mark Brantley, as a local on the street economist, right? A minimum wage increase discussion, not wrong in having discussion, but a minimum wage increase at this point in time is not feasible and is not accessible to the Federation and the country at hand at this time. We all know both of the countries that make up the Federation, things are very slow, things are very hard, right? We all know in both islands nothing much is happening in terms of business-wise help and progress for the people and small and large businesses. And I will tell you, as somebody on the street, somebody who being around small and big businesses, the private sector would not agree with both of you as the Premier of Nevis and Dr. Joe as the Prime Minister of the Federation at a wage minimum increase at this moment.
So, Mr. Brown, your argument is based on the premise, as you say, that nothing is happening on both islands. Where do you get that from? Because I am curious as to what yardstick you're using.
Yardstick I'm using,
yes,
Honorable Premier, is that the small businesses and large businesses at this point in time, right, is that nothing much is happening. What we will say, what we call is rise.
Wait, you cut out there a minute. That is what you call what?
Listen again. Is what we call at this moment is high rise of prices and growth of in businesses at this moment.
Yeah, well, right? Yes, prices are up, inflation is up, but your premise is that nothing is happening, and I am challenging on that premise because I gave a report in the Parliament here in Nevis 2 weeks ago, and every single sector in Nevis has shown growth this year. Every single one. Every single revenue head, VAT, customs, property tax, offshore, hotel tax, all of them have shown an increase. I had a meeting last night, caller, at the Four Seasons. Today is the 19th of July. Normally, you don't see no tourists in Nevis after May. Last night I was at the Four Seasons, and it down there was like carnival. I couldn't even get a drink. I was there with somebody to have a meeting, and it took a while before the people could come and inquire what we wanted because they were rushing from here to there. The hotel was vibrant, and I said, but this looked like a January crowd. I can't believe this is July. You drive around Nevis, I can't speak for St. Kitts, but you drive around Nevis, go to the off-roads and the villages, is a ton load of construction going on in Nevis. So I don't understand when people say nothing is happening, because it's something that I just don't understand, because it seems to me that it is just regurgitated, but it's not based on anything. Because when I look around the island of Nevis, I see so much happening. When you see events, Carl, you just come out the music fest, all the dance, them ram, everything sold out. Well, if nothing happen, where the money come from for people to go and sold out? Because remember, when you go music fest and you buy the ticket for $100, ain't only there, you know. You got hair and nails and outfit to do too. So I am trying to understand, because it's a easy thing to say, it's a catchphrase, nothing happen, nothing go on. But the factors that you would look at in terms of the data and the statistics doesn't bear that out. So I don't mind if you're saying that there is some opposition to an increase in the minimum wage. I believe that whenever you increase the minimum wage in any country, there should be widespread consultation. So I agree on that. But I don't think that the premise that somehow both islands, nothing is happening, is an accurate premise. I don't think so at all, not based on what we are seeing on Nevis.
Okay, the Honorable Mark Brantley, with all of that you said,
yes,
right? My question is to you. When you and the Prime Minister sit down shortly and discussing the increase in the minimum wage, would you, despite all the good things is happening on Nevis, and I am hearing cry from a lot of the small business people, and I am hearing cry from a lot of people that they are not working, nothing is happening for them, would you give the nudge to the Prime Minister to give a minimum wage increase as the Premier of Nevis, and so many good things is happening on Nevis?
My position would be, as I just said, that any time in any country that there's a discussion about increasing the minimum wage, it should be based on the widest possible consultation. I don't think I do not think that it's a decision that should just be taken by the PM, by the Premier. I think it's a decision that should be informed by wide consultation. Think it's, for example,
the private sector,
the unions,
and all those supposed to be on board,
well,
and in the discussion to bring forth the analysis and how the business and how things are happening for them.
I agree with you, and I'm simply saying that would be my position on that discussion, because we would have to understand that if the minimum wage goes up, what will happen is that the cost of living will also go up. A lot of people,
Mark Brantley, the government and the private sector itself will have to make that money to continually pay the increase in that minimum wage.
How do you think the private sector going to make that money?
Where the private sector have to work along with the government, and the private sector have to open up projects and programs and policies, create job programs, create revenue for everybody.
Caller, you're complicating the thing.
I am not complicating the thing.
If you're employed at Rams, and Rams used to pay you $100, and Rams is told that they must move you from $100 to $150. How you think Rams is going to make that extra $50 to pay you?
Well, Rams have to create policies and programs and projects to make that money, to agree with the government to pay that money.
Policy and program ain't going to pay you. Rams going to increase the prices. That's what's going to pay you. That's what the private sector does. The private sector,
the people don't making that money to go to shop at the Rams. Rams increase the prices, but Rams won't make much money because the people are not working for that money.
Caller, you're not listening. I'm saying if you increase the cost of production, it means that you're going to increase the cost of goods and services. If you do that,
I'll agree with that.
Well, that is how the world works. You think if you said to the private sector tomorrow
and making money to do that,
My point is
to go and buy those goods and services that you increase.
Caller, you're not listening. If you argue for an increase in wages, as desirable as that is, I am simply saying that the standard response from the private sector would be to adjust for their costs, because the cost of goods and services would have been increased.
We all agree to that.
And they're not going to swallow that increase, they're going to pass on the increase to the consumer.
Yeah, but the consumer have to be making that money for the private sector and the government to make that money. So the private sector and the government have to create jobs and programs and projects for that money to be made.
But the consumer, caller, is the person who have just got the benefit of a wage increase.
Yeah, but here you get a wage increase, and then the private sector is not making that money. The government have emergency resources where they could dig in, right? But the private sector would not have that. The private sector have to make that money, and the workers have to make that money to shop with the private sector and the government, so that everything could go in one accord. If the government gives that and the private sector is not making that, we all know the analogy. Private sector going to lay off, and we're going to have the unemployment line getting longer, because they're not making the money to pay the staff and to turn over the businesses. So I am saying to you all, be careful at how you all going to be doing this when you all go to discussion, because you have to look at the financial structure that is going to happen. Yes, it's good. Everybody wants to increase. Everybody would like to get increase, but that money has to made. The Honorable Brantley, so that increase to continually pay. Because it don't make no sense to give that increase, and then 3-4 months later, businesses are telling you, and bosses and employers are telling you, we laying you off because things are slow, we're not seeing the money.
Alright. Okay,
okay,
I think we have your point. And you have something else to add?
Well, the other thing I want to add is, I don't understand. I hear you boasting weeks and months ago that the relationship with the Prime Minister and things are going good. But week after week I come ask you a question here, and you're saying the Prime Minister ain't discuss these things with you. But these things are in syncades and on social media and out there and being discussed in syncades. And I don't see how they are not discussed with the Premier of Nevis.
So you say that to say what?
I am saying this to say that you're boasting.
You hear me boasting?
With the Prime Minister.
You heard me boasting about the relationship with the...
But every week when I come and I ask you a question to what is happening, you are telling me that the Prime Minister have not sit and discussed these things with you.
So
how is this relationship so good?
Caller, first of all, you heard me boasting about relationship?
Yes!
Caller, the only thing you have heard me say... Caller, relax yourself, calm down. The only thing you have heard me say is that it is important to have a good relationship, and that the NIA, led by me, and the federal government, led by Prime Minister Drew, must have a working relationship. And that so far, the tone and the dialogue, in my view, has been helpful. And we continue to work at that relationship. Where in that you hear any boasting?
Brantley, I have heard you, and the world have heard you, saying that you and the Prime Minister have a good relationship in terms since the Labour government has taken office.
All right, caller.
Week after week, I ask you a question and you tell me the
caller, you keep saying the same thing over and over. It's not getting any better by repetition. You have another point that you want to raise?
I'm gone for the moment, the Honorable Brantley.
You had a good run, so happy for you to call it. Let me just explain that this nonsense about boasting about relationship, we're not in primary school. And I think that people, when they listen, they must listen to understand, not just listen to respond. And that's very important, Carl, because I know you like to call in the radio and you have very passionate views, as is your right. But saying that it's important to have a relationship, that we are working on that relationship, and that relationship is important for the people of Nevis, and having that dialogue is important, I don't know how that is tantamount to anybody boasting about anything. So maybe it is I'm not quite understanding the point you're making, or you're not quite understanding the public utterances that I have made. Firstly. Secondly, it would be ludicrous to assume that every single issue that you call in and ask me about, has the Prime Minister discussed with you, that the answer to that will always be yes, because the Prime Minister and I are not meeting every day, we are not talking to each other on the phone every day. The Prime Minister and I have discussions, yes, from time to time on a number of different issues. And we are to meet shortly, and as I said to you, this particular issue, no doubt, will be part of that discussion. What in that suggests that somehow the relationship doesn't exist? I just feel that sometimes we are looking for a narrative that serves our own purpose and supports whatever viewpoint we might have. And in this instance, Carl, I just think that you're barking up the wrong tree. Discussions are happening, discussions will happen, but because you decide that you want to ask, did the Prime Minister discuss the traffic light down Central Street with you? And I said, no, that has not yet come up, or that has not been discussed. You say, there's no relationship. No, that's not how life works. We have met, we will meet, and we will have such discussions as are necessary. And as I said, big issues such as wage increases should properly be the subject of widespread consultation, because increases in the minimum wage will have a widespread impact in terms of the broader economic landscape of the country. And that's my position. Let me go back to the phones and take some more calls. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello?
Good night to the Honorable Mark Brantley. Good night.
Yes, good evening.
First, I always want to thank God for life. Thank God for the Federation of St. Nevis, country we are born into and live into, and doing well for myself. And I could reach out to others, I reach out to the less fortunate. But Mark, now, first I want to commend Lady Composer. I believe as a female candidate going into the Culturama, I believe that she's so good. I hear the Chita song she released. I hear the first song Tan ZIZ at the time. And I believe that them two songs well put together. And I believe that she gonna give a big surprise in the Culturama competition. I believe she'll be a big surprise. Now, Brother Mark, let me move on. Now, I was discussing about the NRP with the court matter and everything, right? When the party took, who took them to court? The NRP?
Who took to court?
The individual candidates then.
Well, remember, it's an election petition, so the individual candidate will have to be the one to move the court. But I would expect that when they do so with the full backing of their party.
Well, I always think, because when Tom used to put in them petition cases against after election, and come against them, and they got to pay court costs. I always say that it is not the party supposed to pay those costs, because it's the party they represent and it's the party they run for. You understand?
Yes.
So I always think that, but the political party then becomes the organization, and I was in a political party down here for a lot of years, and I used to pay my party dues. I used to contribute to the party, we get whatever the party says fund. But I don't see the political party raising fund. I don't know if the CCM does that, but I don't see the political party raising fund much. Look how they used to do before. I remember the People's Action Movement used to get things every weekend up they got shows, they got happy hours and all those things, try to respond for the party. You understand? I know the Labour Party one time also got these things too. But I don't hear nothing, especially when the party in government. I don't know if the supporters, I mean, some people, they say they represent party, right? Them are Labour and them are PAM and them are PLP and them are this and them and that. But the only Labour and CCM with them out. They don't pay the party dues. Some people want to fill for the party, and they don't pay the party dues. You understand? And, you know, Mark, I like to know the explanation to Carl Brown, because the minimum wage, as far as I'm concerned, well, can't Carl Brown for you. If the minimum wage go up, things will, the supermarket is going to cut the price. Stores going to cut the price because they got to pay the workers them. They got to pay the workers, and if the minimum wage go up to whatever, and they work out the budget, and they see that they can afford to hire, maybe they got 60 workers, or they got 100 workers, they will get to have about 24 because the minimum wage gone up. Because every business work with a budget, and you got to hire the staff to suit the money you make it, whether you make it monthly or weekly or whatever, or you pay. You understand?
Well, that's why I said it has widespread implications, and therefore, to me, there should be consultation.
It must be consultation.
Right.
You just can't end up and charge minimum wage from the people like that.
All right. Good.
It must be consultation with the supermarket and with the.
All right. Well, we are out of time, so we'll have to leave it there this week. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, this is On the Mark. We only have about 2 minutes left. Do we have another call? Okay, so we don't have another call. All right. We coming really to the end of the show now, and so I think we have time for perhaps one short call if somebody wanted to call in. 469-1616-1700. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening. You're On the Mark. Hello.
Yes, good night, Mr. Brantley.
You're our last caller. You have.
Yeah, I'm a very short.
1 minute.
What is your stance in nominating El Comedo Tenito Willett to be a national hero?
Okay. All right.
That's the question.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think in relation to national heroes and nominations for national heroes, there is a process for that. There's I think a committee that has been put in place to consider. And so anybody who wants somebody to be nominated as a national hero has the ability to make that necessary submission and to support that submission. Mr. Willett is one individual who has made a tremendous contribution. He created history here, being the first Leeward Islander to make the West Indies team. And so certainly if those who make those decisions determine that he ought to be named a national hero, that certainly will have no opposition from me. It will be a matter for them. They're the ones charged with that decision. The banner struck up. It means we have to go. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your calls this evening. I think the show was live and lively. It will be rebroadcast tomorrow at 1 p.m. right here on Von Radio. This has been On the Mark, and we have been here on the Eastern Caribbean's only powerhouse, VON Radio, the voice of Nevis, 106 AM on your dial, or www.vonradio.com. For all of you who tuned in, for the hundreds that watched and participated with their comments, I thank you. For those who call, I thank you. Thank you for continuing to make this show a very special show every Wednesday. That's our show. Thank you. Good night, and God bless you.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis Broadcasting Company Limited or its advertisers. With all